to close off the Hilchos 101 class with a question that I actually get a lot when people buy a new home down here when they move permanently into the neighborhood, and that is they say, oh my goodness, I'm not used to Florida architecture, and where am I going to put the mezuzah or the mezuzahs? So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go over some of the basic rules of mezuzah, and then we'll look at, not that these are Florida architecture, the pictures, I found them all online, despite what we were joking a moment ago, but I thought that at least insofar as the challenges which someone is going to present, these are the kinds of things which we typically will see in some of the houses here, and therefore, insofar as we have questions, hopefully we'll have a good guidance for how to go about placing the mezuzahs properly. And in the event that anybody has a particular question, especially after this class, and hopefully after the class everybody's an expert. But in the event that you have a question at any point in time, I'm happy to come over and to give you an opinion as to where I think the mezuzah should go. Okay, the outline which you have here is very simplistic. I didn't want to get bogged down in heavy reading when it comes to mezuzah learning. So if anybody does want to learn the halachos in a little more detail, you can find it in whatever book is based on the Shulchan Aruch, whether it's the Torah, the Shulchan Aruch, or HaShulchan. It has a Yerodea section, so the Mishnah Berurah doesn't have a Yerodea section. In Yerodea Siman Mim 285 through 291. Rambam also has laws of mezuzah in the Chelek Ahava. There are a number of places in the Talmud as well who not only discuss mezuzah, but in some cases they even have an illustration of some kind, whether it's an archway or a combination of some kind of doorway which looks like an upside down V, or circumstances in which there's a doorway that leads into a wall. So we're going to talk about all those momentarily, but I found two places in particular that have an actual illustration in there, and so those sources, depending on how old the Gemara is, I actually look at the contemporary Gemaras if they have an updated version of these illustrations. But anyway, that's what we have. So let's go through the most important rules, and this of course begins in the Gemara and stems away throughout all the halachas of mezuzah. So the first one is the question of what kind of room, or what size room requires a mezuzah. Now, before we get into that, of course, I think we all know the source for this mezuzah in the Torah. Right? It's part of the Shema, Tzavtam, Al Mezuzos, Beisecha, Uvisharecha. Is what needs a mezuzah is whatever fits into the category of what is your house, Beisecha, your house, and Sharecha, your gates. Okay, and a sha'ar essentially opens up into a space which is part of your property, but isn't necessarily a part of your house. What's the difference between a bayis and a sha'ar, a gate which opens into something? A bayis is a house that has a roof over it. Something which is not a bayis doesn't have a roof over it. Okay, now that doesn't change the definition of what kind of opening or doorway would require a mezuzah, because of the rule which we're going to get to in a moment, which is actually number 3 in this first section. But as far as just an area that requires a mezuzah, so the halacha is very clear. It goes back to Gemara, which is to need an area which is daled al daled. What is daled al daled? Daled al daled means 4 by 4. What's 4 by 4? So the Gemara's units is not feet, okay, and in this case it's not a tefach. Tefach is a handbreadth, which is typically around 4 inches. It's referring to amos. How big is an amos? So there are a lot of different disciplines of this, but it more or less falls into the range of between 1.5 foot to 2 feet. Okay, and that's not the consensus. The range is the consensus. Obviously, there are different people who have different definitions of what it may be, but in essence, what we're talking about is an area which is at the very minimum 6 feet by 6 feet. Now, there is a debate as to whether that 6 feet by 6 feet, which is what, 36 square feet, okay, whether that is, it has to be specifically 4 by 4, or could it be an area which covers 36 square feet? So let's say would that be, let's go into feet realm, because that's what we're
9 by
more
4.
familiar with units wise. So if you have an area which is 9 by 4, does that require mezuzah? So I think that we would say yes. We would say yes, even though it isn't officially dollar by dollar, four cubits, but nonetheless, the square amage, the square footage, definitely fits into the same range, and therefore that would require mezuzah. So where does this become a challenge? Where does something like this become a challenge? So, okay, we'll get to that in a couple of minutes. I just want to go a little bit more into the question of what is considered to be a bias. So I think that obviously the entrance to a house is considered to be a bias. The other definition of bias is a place where people actually live. And what's the definition of living? The definition of living is a place where people spend a good majority of time. And in many cases, it's actually considered to be a place where people sleep. So, a house in and of itself, the entrance to a house is covered under the word Beisah. So that's obvious. People sleep in a house. When we're talking about inside, in the inner rooms of a house, so what requires a mezuzah? So I think that a bedroom, by definition, is a place that a person sleeps, lives, right? Therefore it spends a good portion of the time of the day, even though maybe people spend the majority of their time in the bedroom sleeping, but nonetheless that's considered to be living. And maybe people don't hang out so much in their bedroom during the day, but nonetheless, because most people probably spend at least a third of their day, assuming that they sleep as per the recommended amount. Some people are not very good about that, but anyway, 8 hours. So bedroom is a place which requires a mezuzah. What about other areas of the house? So there are a couple of things which actually come into play when we ask this question. Number one, is there a place where we spend a good deal of time, or could spend a good deal of time? And number two, does it have a doorway? Okay? If it doesn't have a doorway, there's no place to put a mezuzah, as we're going to get to soon. So this question actually manifests itself as well in the question of shul. Is a shul required to have a mezuzah? Well, ask any guest who's ever come to this shul, okay, who doesn't know how we operate. They'll tell you this place is never open. Oh, it is open during chakras. It is open when they have class. It's open from tomorrow. Otherwise, it isn't really open. Unless there's something going on for a bulk of the day. And so does the shul require a mezuzah? So there is a debate about it. The truth is that most authorities say that a shul doesn't require a mezuzah. It's not a place where people live. If you compare a shul to a beis medrash, for example, so which would require more likely a mezuzah, a beis medrash? Because a beis medrash is a place where presumably people are spending a longer period of time. Now, we can get into the funny joke question of where do people sleep more.
Sorry.
And how little rabbi sermons, right? But the truth is that I remember when I was in Yeshiva in Israel, there was a guy who decided he was going to go on a just not leave the beis medrash for a very long period of time, and as a result, he was subsisting on coffee. And it came time for we got him into right after lunch, right after the break, right after lunch, and during that minute, he put his head down for tafel and fell asleep for 6 hours. That's dangerous. But anyway, but clearly he slept more that week in his chair in the beis medrash than he slept in his room in the dormitory. So for him, it's certainly a place which constitutes living in that example. Now, there is a distinction also made, and so in one of the sources that discusses this, between a shul which is in a house versus a shul which is just a shul. So, and shuls in which people actually live full time, meaning in which it's declared as their home, such as this one. So what does that mean for the doorways in the building? Well, once you call the shul a house, so it becomes fair game. Presumably, it might be open a little more for people who are living there, even if the access to the shul in some cases. I've been in shuls where the main sanctuary, for example, has its own little entrance, even though it's attached to a house. So it's probably zoned as a house, and therefore it has different rules as per a house. But the shul part may be open all the time, whereas the house is just for the family that lives there. So what would that do to the shul part? Is it considered to be part of the house, or is it considered to be part of the shul? Does zoning impact whether the shul is all of a sudden a house, or think that most places, most schools are going to put a mezuzah up anyway. The question is whether a bracha would be required when it is put up. And I think that in the case of a shul, we would probably put up a mezuzah with the bracha and then have the bracha cover everything else in a second, and then put all the other mezuzahs up. But all the mezuzahs up, they're not required. They're just to cover, just in case. Or let's say it's a Jewish building, so yeah.
What about the whole line of reasoning I've heard many times over the years about one of the reasons not to put a mezuzah up in the shul is the presence of Sefer Torah, potentially in various rooms. That a room with a Sefer Torah certainly doesn't need a mezuzah on outside of it. These are things.
So I don't mean to shoot you down. I think that was the Korach question, right? Was the question which Korach asked, to Moshe. So, a room full of Sefer Torah doesn't need a mezuzah, and the answer was, first of all, come here, But secondly, meaning to Korach, and secondly, the answer is, of course, it needs a mezuzah. I mean, that may be an argument. But I think it's really more fundamentally based on the question of, is it considered Beis Sefer? Is it a place where people live? And since typically the answer is no, even if, look, there may be some shuls that are open 24 hours. I would imagine that there are some shuls in Israel that, that is a shul / base medrash, and of course it should have a mezuzah, because people are just, they're in there all the time. In many shuls in America they don't have that kind of traffic in the same way that you have it, certainly in some places in Jerusalem, for example, where you just have people in and out all day long. That is a different kind of circumstance. Okay, so that's a general overview when it comes to just defining what a bias is versus what a bias is not. So people live there, yes, and people don't really live there, or they spend a very minimal amount of time there. Even if it is a Jewish building, it isn't necessarily required. Okay, now, once we get into the question of, once we're past the question of what is defined as a bias and what is defined as a sha'ar, as a gate, the next question is, does every space that is within a bias fall into the category of what needs a mezuzah? And I think we know that the answer is no, because, for example, we typically don't put a mezuzah on a room which has behavior going on in it which is not very respectful to the mezuzah. Okay, so a bathroom, for example, doesn't get a mezuzah. And even in some cases, some of the bathrooms which we have, let's say, there might be a separate room for the, I'll just call it the facility, versus the room where you have a sink, you have a bathtub. But the fact of the matter is that even if the toilet is in one separated room, you still have the shower, bathtub, in the larger room. And the fact is that if people walk around undressed, so that is not considered to be appropriate, and therefore a bathroom would not get a mezuzah no matter what. There is, interestingly enough, and it's funny thinking about how much society has changed. The Mishnah talks about this in a different context. And when it comes to the laws of mezuzah, it's also raised, I don't remember where I saw it, but the idea that once upon a time, I don't think this is a common practice now, but it talks about how women, if they did certain chores in the household, in a state of undress, okay, such as, in some cases it's talking about cooking, in some cases it's talking about washing things or washing items. So the washing items I can understand a little better, because you don't want to get your clothes all wet, you don't want to get your clothes dirty. Again, I don't think this is what's done anymore, so we certainly don't wash things anymore in that fashion where your clothes are going to get dirty. You go to the washing machine. It's not even relevant in any conversation. But the point is that in those contexts, it's discussed, and it's just, no, if there's a room which is designated for such an activity, even if it's a kitchen, it shouldn't get a mezuzah. Okay, now I don't know of anybody who does that anymore, so we'll leave that aside. But the question is also raised with respect to bedrooms. Okay? There are times, I would imagine, that there are people who are in their bedroom and they're in a state of undress for whatever reason. And the question is, does that bedroom get a mezuzah? So what's the answer to that question? How can you not put a mezuzah on your bedroom? Well, the answer is that in most bedrooms that we have, which direction does the door go into? The door goes usually into the bedroom. So therefore, where is the mezuzah placed? On the outside of the doorway. And so if the assumption would be made that at the time when a person is in such a state, the door is going to be closed. Where is the mezuzah? On the outside. So it's not exposed, so to speak, to that state of undress which would be otherwise inappropriate. That's another reason why, just to take it to its next logical conclusion, why we have cases for mezuzahs. There was, I'm sure, once upon a time, that what was put on the doorpost, there weren't manufacturing metal, plastic cases, metal, maybe they were metal, I don't know. But it wasn't always the case that a mezuzah was put into some kind of thing, certainly not wrapped in cellophane and put into the mezuzah for protection. The halacha discusses, for example, the need to check on mezuzahs on a regular basis. Okay, if it's in a home, I think it's twice every 7 years. If it's in the gate of a city, once every 50 years. What's he talking about? Once every 50 years? Has anybody, I'm sure everybody here, if you've been to Israel, you've been to the old city of Jerusalem. You ever look at the gates when you walk through the old city of Jerusalem? Okay, where is the mezuzah in the gate of the city? It's built into the wall. Okay, there's a hole in the wall. It's built, and that's why I say you don't have to check it all that often. Because it's built into the rock. In order to get it out, you have to break down the rock in which it's embedded. But that serves as a protection for it. So that the question is, if the mezuzah is on your doorpost and it's in a piece of paper that people not paper obviously, parchment, which people are touching all the time, so you have to check it on a fairly regular basis. Because the same rule would apply if it's wrapped in cellophane and it's in a plastic or a metal case. And it's never touched by anybody, and the air in the room is controlled by air conditioning or whatever through the thermostat. Doesn't need to be checked on a regular basis in the same way. Not as clear. I remember once when I was in YU, I took a Sappho's class with Rabbi Schneider. Once he's a known sofer. He was telling the stories about how there was this big mezuzah checking gathering, and everybody brought in their mezuzahs, and Rabbi Schneider, he's a little more, okay, your mezuzahs are fine, but there's some sofer who want to, they need to make a living, and so what do? They say, I see a problem here, I see a problem here, I see, I'll sell you a whole new boatload of mezuzahs. He says, you don't need to do that, you need to check them. Okay? These are all your conversations, which I don't want to get bogged down into now, because I do want to focus on the contemporary architecture component. But anyway, so getting back to the question. You walk into a house, okay, so you need to go through the doorway. So I know a lot of houses have like a little front entrance that is like a screened-in mini porch, and then you have the doorway of the house. So what's the definition of the screened-in porch? Even if that area, it isn't usually 36 square feet. It might be, but what is that? That is the opening of your house. That's base 7. Or at the very least, it's shared out. Okay, it's the now, based on the definition that I gave you before, where it's roofed in, so it usually is roofed in. So that's one entrance to your house, even if that front area isn't 4x4, but it's nonetheless the entrance to your house to one degree. And then if you have another doorway that leads into your actual house, your living quarters, so that's also considered base 7. So both of those would need a mezuzah. Okay, now, you get into your house and have a small little foyer. Now, some places have a small little foyer, and that little foyer is not dollar by dollar. It's not 4x4. Or, better example, that I know some of the houses in some of the developments, when you walk in, immediately to the left, let's say, to the right, you have a little hallway that leads into the bathroom and to a guest room, for example, or whatever, maybe it leads into 2 rooms. Does that area require a mezuzah? Anybody? What do you think? It's not 4 hours by 4 hours. It never is. It's usually a space that's maybe it's 4 feet by 4 feet, or maybe 4 feet by 6 feet. But it's not the right amount. Not 6 feet by 6 feet, at least. Certainly not 8 feet by 8 feet. Certainly not 36 square feet. Does it require a mezuzah? Is it even a room? Okay, so the answer is it doesn't require a mezuzah. It's not big enough. It's not big enough. It doesn't require a mezuzah. The basic rule is 4 by 4. Okay, so can you put up a mezuzah? Yeah, but not with a bracha. Okay, you don't put up a mezuzah with a bracha. In the event that you want to put mezuzahs on all your doorways, you're certainly allowed to. And you can put a mezuzah wherever you want. But it's not. But is it? The question is it even required, or does it belong there? I mean, is it a question of Baal Tosif? Let's say you hang mezuzahs on your door. I'm saying on your door, on your wall. You have a wall and you have decorative mezuzahs. Assuming that you're putting parchments in. kind of silly. It's a waste of money. There's no need to do that. But can you do that? I don't know. I don't think that that's considered baltosive. You're putting it in a place that is completely irrelevant. But in general, it's a good idea. If you want to cover all the doorways in your household, in what are real doorways, then you make one bracha when you're putting up the one in the front of your house, which absolutely requires, and then you cover everything else at the same time. Fine. What happens if you realize you didn't have enough mezuzahs, or you missed one doorway? You say, oh, you know what? I didn't realize that this one needed one. So you're going to come later. So then the question really comes up: do I need to say a bracha when I put that mezuzah? Okay, another example would be a laundry room. Okay, so laundry room, there's nothing inappropriate going on there in the sense of what, compared to the bathroom, which I mentioned before. Does the laundry room require mezuzah? So I guess it really depends on A, how much time you spend in there, and B, how big is the room? Okay, so one of the questions which actually can be raised when it comes to laundry room. So there are some houses which have pretty big laundry rooms, but what's the problem that you run up with when you have a laundry room is that you put in these big machines that are, even though they are movable, they typically take up a certain amount of space that, to all intents and purposes, they take away from the space that is in the room. So it's not a question of the size of the room, wall to wall. It's a question of the size of the space where you can actually walk. So if you have a counter, for example, on one side, a cabinet on one side, and a washing machine on the other side, so the amount of space that you have to walk in now is no longer considered to be dollar on dollar. It's no longer 36 square feet of walking space area. Even if the laundry room required it, it doesn't require one now, simply because of what is in there. Now, if a person we spend a lot of time in the laundry room, okay, but based on whatever's in there, the amount of walking space there is, I don't think that the laundry room there requires a mezuzah. Okay. What about a garage? Okay, so what would be the answer to garage? Does garage really need a mezuzah? Folks, come on, what's a garage? It's an entrance to your house. Even if you would say it's not a place where you live, or you don't spend a whole lot of time, then it's a shop. Okay, it's at least a gate. So a garage door would require a mezuzah. Okay, on the outside, and even on the inside. Going in there, if you're going through into a shower, and it's into an area which is your house, which is part of your living domicile. So it's certainly big enough where you can walk around. It would require a mezuzah. Another example. So we have in the back of some people's houses, you have an entrance to an outdoor area, let's say. Okay? So the question there is, or let's say that, I'll give you a different example. It's not as common here, but I remember when I lived in Forest Hills. So we had, attached to our apartment, we had a little patio. Okay, a little patio. There was a door, a full door, entrance to the patio. There's only one way to get out there. There's only one way to get out there. That's through the door from the living room that goes to the patio. Does that patio door need a mezuzah? Okay, well, we spend a lot of time on it. Okay, but anyway, does it need mezuzah? So the answer is yes. The question is, where would you be putting it? And so the answer to that is what?
Going out.
Exactly, going out, because it's an enclosed area. There's only one way to get there. You can't get from there into the house in the other direction. And so, typically speaking, when you put a mezuzah in, you put it on the right side when you're going into the more important room. Okay, but if you're entering the house, no matter how much you use your outside area versus your inside area, so usually when you're entering your house, you would put it on the right side. Unless the space outside can only be accessed from the house, in which case you would actually put it on the right side going out. So that's another little rule to bear in mind. Now, the question that I've been asked probably most about in this neighborhood is about the Florida sunroof, which is typically accessed by sliding doors. In some cases, people have a big sunroom, which is accessed through two sets of sliding doors. Okay, and so in that kind of situation, where do you put the mezuzah? So we're going to get back to that question in a moment, because first we have to determine whether that doorway even gets a mezuzah. Okay, so we'll get back to that soon when we look at all the all of the pictures which we have.
Wait a minute.
Okay. What is the definition of a doorway that needs a mezuzah? So it has to be a doorway. The definition of a doorway is it has two distinct sides and something on top. So let me use the arm close here for a moment. Okay. Is this considered to be a doorway? Obviously, this is not a room that is, by any stretch of the imagination, would require a mezuzah. But you have here a side, you have here the side, and you have the top. Distinct. That would be a doorway, which if there were a room on the other side, which would require a mezuzah, so that would work. Let's take a look at, yes?
What about a walk-in closet?
Right, so we're going to get to a walk-in closet.
I didn't see one.
Depends on how big the walk-in closet is.
What?
Okay, some walk-in
36 square
Look,
feet.
in my house, we have two walk-in closets. Okay, my walk-in closet is definitely not big enough. Okay, for mezuzah. The other walk-in closet belongs to the boss of the house. Might be big enough, but there's a thing in the middle that kind of takes away from the amount of space. I don't know. Right. So how much living goes on there? Right. So I mean, I don't think people spend a whole lot of time in the walk-in closet. Certainly not in comparison to the bedroom. But the truth is that the walk-in closet might follow along the same lines of what I mentioned before with regard to the bathroom, because sometimes people may change in their closet, and if you're changing your closet, it's a room which is no different than the bathroom, which has a shower, and therefore wouldn't require a mezuzah. Maybe you can't even put a mezuzah first. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at some of the cases that we have. Okay. So I numbered all of these. Hopefully that should be a little helpful in terms of our go through. Now there is one classic case. It's the first one which I described here, which I couldn't find a picture of. And that is, but the truth is, like, you know what, we can look at number one. Number one is the closest thing which I'll get to. Okay? Imagine if you look at the picture of number one. So you see where the entrance to this space is, all the way in the back? Right, all the way in the back there, you have it. Let's imagine that that's the entrance, or whatever it is. So if you're coming from that door, so you see on the right side you have a wall, meaning on your right side if you're coming from that door. On the right side there's a door, and then the wall continues. And on the left side, right behind where that lamp is, there's a wall. Now, I don't know what the rest of that wall is, but let's imagine that that wall is simply a wall. Okay? And then on the other side of it, there's a room. So we can make the argument that because that wall comes to a point, that it is one side of a doorway. You understand what I'm saying? Imagine that wall basically comes to here. And on the back side of it, there's another room. So the wall comes to a point over here. We can make the argument that this is a side. Okay? Now, it goes all the way to the ceiling, so there isn't a lintel. It's not an example that I really wanted. But there are houses where you have that wall goes up to something, and then it comes here, and then it hits flush smack against the wall that's on the other side. So that wall that's on the other side, would it require a mezuzah? If, let's say that you're coming into the house over there, and this nice living room here is you're entering into this living room from that space. Does it require a mezuzah? No, I'm saying if there were a lintel there. If there were a lintel. Okay, the answer is no. No, why? Because again, coming from that doorway, what's on the right side, you don't have what is the definition of mezuzah? The definition of mezuzah is a door post. Regardless of whether you have a door, it's a door post. There's no post here. It's a wall. It's a wall, which is opposite a door frame, meaning whatever that wall would be, and there's a lintel there, but there isn't a mezuzah on this side. Again, on mezuzos b'sefer, you're putting that on the mezuzah of your house. The mezuzah means a door post. That is a wall only. Now, in one of the pictures which I saw, which is not actually the Gemara, but it is it's actually in the Shulchan Aruch. Hold on a second. I'll tell you where it is. You can look it up afterwards. I didn't give you the copy. But in the Shulchan Aruch, there is an example in which it has illustrations. They're not such great illustrations, to be honest, but they have something along those lines where it describes a wall and a wall that goes all the way up, and a wall that has a lintel, and a wall that does not. believe it was in Reish Pei Tes. Hilchos mezuzah, but I'm not finding it right now. Hold on a second. So there it has, in the examples which it gives, here it is. It's Reish Pei Zayin, the Shulchan Aruch, and it gives examples there in which the space there is separate. I believe, unless I'm reading this illustration wrong, but again, the illustration, I don't even think the illustration was put together by the Taz. It's in the Taz, of Reish Pei Zayin, but it's where he's talking about how you have to have shtei mezuzot, where you have to have two doorposts. So the picture is given over in two-dimensional, so it's not clear exactly what he's describing. But if you look at over there, we can have the argument. But I think that the case is describing what I'm talking about, where you don't have a wall completely there, the way that it just keeps going straight, kind of ignoring the fact that there is an opposite lintel, an opposite doorway, and that would be, or an opposite side. So therefore, it wouldn't be a mezuzah. Okay, let's take a look at actually, no, before we get into all the pictures, I want to talk about the different cases which we have, the strange cases which I gave you in the doorway number, in the numbers. So what about a swinging door? What about a swinging door? So how does a swinging door operate? Yeah, it's on a hinge of some kind, and the way that it goes, it goes through its opposite lintel over in both directions, and therefore the part of the door that fully swings, if you put a mezuzah there, it would knock it off. And if you put it on the other side, where the door, where the hinge is, if you push the door hard enough in either direction, it would also knock it off. So what do you do there? That is, a swinging door is typically in a door frame that has two lintels, two door frames and a lintel, so it requires a mezuzah. What do? If it's supposed to be in the door frame, and that's typically the way that we have a door, it's supposed to be in the door frame, what do you do in that kind of situation? So the recommendation is to actually do what you have, like in the old city of Jerusalem, in the entranceway. What you need to do is you need to carve out a little groove in the door frame and stick the mezuzah in there. You don't have to have a fancy case that puts in there. You can just put a piece of a mezuzah rolled up and wrapped in cellophane in there. I don't know if it's appropriate. I don't know if it's appropriate to even just leave it the way that it was, just put the parchment there. We don't do that anymore. Maybe once upon a time that was done, but maybe an argument can be made in that kind of situation. I don't know how respectful it is to the mezuzah. You probably have to check it a lot more often than twice every 7 years if you did that, because it would probably get rubbed off. But I think that the better way to do it is to put a space, is to carve a space into that, and do it creatively. It may look fascinating and interesting, and it could become a conversation piece without ruining the way things look. A sliding door, pocket door. Okay, that some people have that in their homes. Now, if you have it in your bathroom, not a problem. But if you have it somewhere else in the house, a sliding door, assuming that there's a door frame, which usually there is in the pocket door. So what do? So in some cases, the pocket door, you can't put it on the door, and you can't really put it on the frame where you would normally want to put it where the door enters, because you would smash the mezuzah. So you could do the same thing that I mentioned just a second ago with the swinging door. In some cases, the door frame is big enough that you can put the mezuzah there. And even if you can't put it on an angle, which is the Ashkenazi custom, you could put it straight. And if that's the case, great. If not, it is a challenge. It is a challenge. And what some people do is they put it, a little off on the angle, not really in the door frame, in the same way that is ideal. But at least there you have a solution. Okay, the sliding door to outdoors or to the sunroom. So that is one of the biggest challenges which we have. It really depends on the construction of the home. You have to look at where the doorway is set in. If the frame of the sliding door is all that you have there, actually I have an example of this here. Let's see how many of you recognize this picture. Look at number 16.
Did you get that from the internet?
No, I did not get that one from the internet. Yeah, that's from the shul. I took that one this afternoon. Okay, right. So this is exactly what some people have in the door frame that leads to their sunroom. which is, it's simply a frame. Okay, it's simply a frame that is in a space, but there isn't wall there. There isn't what you can constitute as a lintel on the top, or a mezuzah on either side. If you go and you can check here afterwards, go look and you'll see that the only space that's there is where the doors are. And in this particular case, because all the doors move, and you don't have any door which is a permanent air, what you're looking at really is a very large window. Does a window need a mezuzah? No, because it's not a doorway. So we can call it in contemporary language a doorway. The fact of the matter is it's not a doorway. There's no place that you can say, oh yeah, I can walk through. There isn't any, by any definition, a doorway here. So therefore there's no mezuzah here, and there's no requirement to have mezuzah there. Okay, now, that's as far as sliding doors go. We're going to look at the other examples that I gave you here soon. The door opens out rather than into the room. Okay, now a lot of houses have this issue. So if the door goes into the room, very easy to put a mezuzah on the door frame. What if the door goes out? Most houses in Florida are all built, I think it's code-wise, because of hurricanes, that the doors open outward. And so therefore, as a result, what ends up happening is that in most cases, because of the way we have doors set up, that the door frame is supposed to catch the door when it closes, the one that's supposed to close, but the frame itself is actually on the inside of the house. Very often that is the case. So what do you do? What do you do with that mezuzah? Well, the answer is put it on the inside. Okay? If you want to hide from the shulachim, as long as you don't have a garage, Florida is a great place to live. Because all your mezuzahs are going to be inside and they can't look for your mezuzah. I mean, of course, I say that in jest, but the truth is that in developments where you have a gated community and you can't get in, you probably don't have a big shul problem. Not that it's necessarily a problem. You shouldn't look at it as a problem. So I don't want to use that word. When I was living in Hollywood, so I would get people knocking my door all the time, even though the mezuzah was on the inside, because there was a mezuzah in the garage, and we weren't living in a development or a gated community where it was impossible to access. So it's saved a lot of money since we did one meter. But anyway, okay, let's move on. So the city gate I already mentioned, and now we go into, let's look at these questions, okay? We have number 2. So, if you look, there is that little thing sticking out in the bottom left of the picture, okay? Does that interfere with the door frame? Anybody? Does that make it that it's not an entrance that requires a mezuzah? Does it get a mezuzah?
Yes.
Yes. Where does the mezuzah go? On the right side. Okay, that was easy. Okay, number 3. So you can see the door back in the distance, and then moving in a little further, you can see the entrance to the main room. Does that spot get a mezuzah?
I don't see.
Okay, no lintel and no frame. So the answer is no, it doesn't get a mezuzah. Okay, look at number 4. Number 4, you can make the argument maybe that what's in the middle of the photo, which is essentially the right of the room that I'm looking at entering, that is a very large lintel. Does it get a mezuzah?
What's on the left side?
Nothing. But there's nothing on the left side. You have to have 2 mezuzahs. So since there's only one, it doesn't get a mezuzah. Okay, number 5. Number 5, this is, I wish I could have printed these pictures in color.
The irony there being that it is indeed the living room you're entering.
All right. Okay, what about number 5? Okay, I think that's a sliding pocket door. Okay, but if you're going in from the vantage point of the photo, as you're going deep in, so I think that thing. Let's assume that it's big enough that even if the pocket door goes all the way to the mezuzah, that there's room there for a mezuzah. Does it get a mezuzah?
No.
What? If the photo were in color, you might disagree with what you just said. Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're looking at the door frame. That's the question. Does it get a mezuzah?
No.
No, I don't see it.
No lintel. No mezuzah. Okay? Next. All right, look at number 6. So that I'm looking at the door on the right. You can see, I think there's a woman standing there, but it's a glass double door. Okay? Glass double door. So does that get a mezuzah? One door is open, the other one is closed there. It might be closed permanently, I don't know. Does it get a door? Does it get a mezuzah?
Yes.
The answer is yes. And it looks like that living room that she's standing in is, you have to go in there. So presumably we go on the right side, and I don't think there's any shadow whatsoever. Take a look at number 7. Okay, this is a room that has pillars. Pillars is a big question. Okay, pillars is a big question. Now, do these pillars get mezuzahs? No, there's no lintel, it's not even a question. Okay, there's not a question. Now take a look in number 8. Okay, you see the pillar in the 4 of the picture? In the 4 of the picture. Is that pillar, would that constitute a mezuzah?
It looks like the entrance is further in.
Right, the entrance is further in. The entrance would get a mezuzah. I don't think that's a question. I'm talking about the entrance to this living room, where it's a sunken living room, there's a step down, and there's a pillar on that side.
No.
Does that get a mezuzah?
No.
No lintel, and nothing on the other side. No mezuzah. Okay, number 9, an archway. An archway. That's not a lintel. Does that get a mezuzah?
Yes.
Okay, so the answer is it does. Even though it's not, the typical straight, when it comes to an archway does get a mezuzah. The only question that really comes up when it comes to these kinds of situations is where is the mezuzah placed? Typically, you would say it's between 2/3 and up of the doorway. Okay, so let's measure the doorway at least 2/3 up, and it could be in the top third. You don't want it at the very top, but it has to be above 2/3 up. And so, how you would measure that? I think that you would measure it up until where the curve begins. But that is a doorway, and that would get a mezuzah. In number 10, it's hard really to see, but that is a complete door frame, even though the lintel isn't dropped down. Does it get a mezuzah? Number 10.
Yes.
Okay, the answer is yes, because it is a lintel. Number 11. This is a hard one. Okay, number 11. You have here a frame of some kind, but it looks like it goes to the top of the room. And you can't really see because the picture is cut off. I didn't cut off the picture to make it harder. That's the picture the way that I found it. But at the very top, you can see some decoration of some kind, okay, which falls down from the ceiling. And then you have these 2 tiny little, decorative wooden something or other.
Spindles.
What are they called?
Spindles.
Spindles. Okay. Does this room get a mezuzah?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Let's assume for a second it does get a mezuzah. Where does the mezuzah go? You can't walk through the area on the 2 sides because there's a wooden panel that has the decorative thing on the right and on the left. And you can't walk through there. So I can make the argument that the sides of the entrance to this room are not really the entrance. In which case the spindles are the entrance. Are the spindles a doorway? I think you'd be hard pressed to make that argument. I don't think this room gets mezuzah.
But it appears to be 2 separate rooms.
Yes, you weren't here to talk about that. Doesn't matter. Okay, 12. I think this picture. I just googled interesting door frames, so I found this. It looks like it's some kind of display in a museum, but it looks like from the way that shelving unit is set up, that it's really separating off from another room. Okay, does it get a mezuzah?
There's nothing on the right.
Okay, so there's nothing on the top, and the right side is a wall. So even if you were to make the argument that the shelving unit is a door frame, the fact of the matter is the rest of it is not a door frame, and so therefore there's no mezuzah. Okay, 13 is much harder in color. This is an amazing photo. The first, if you look underneath that basically the entrance to this long hallway. Okay, if you look underneath, so that first section was gray. The rest of it is green on account of the way that it's painted. Okay, so it really looks like a doorway on account of the way that it's painted. Does it get a mezuzah?
Not still all wall.
It's all wall. No mezuzah. It's not a room. Okay, it's a hallway. Next, 14. 14. This is also one of the more difficult questions. Okay, I'm going to make the argument these are decorative pillars. Okay, but if you look at it, these are doorways. Right? It's a doorway. If this were part of your, you know how we make an A-roof, Okay, the Eruv is what's called the Tzuras HaPesach. Tzuras HaPesach means you have two things which constitute essentially a halachic doorway and a cover. Now, it's not a bias or a shower. It's not somebody's house. People don't live where the Eruv is, so we don't put mezuzahs on the Eruv. But this is considered a doorway in a halachic sense if you consider that the top, which is, what do they call that, a soffit, is the soffit considered to be a lintel. Okay, in other words, it doesn't matter. So the answer would be, it doesn't matter if this is A has a door, or B, if it's attached to a wall and therefore there's only this opening. The fact of the matter is that this is halachically, in my view, this is halachically. Now I can't really see the full soffit to understand if it would be considered a lintel, but assuming that it is, and therefore this is a halachic doorway, that would need a mezuzah, and the one next to it would need a mezuzah, and the one next to it would need a mezuzah, because these are all separate doorways that go into the same room. Okay? That is a unique kind of question. Okay, 15 is a walk-in closet. Sorry, what?
Door in front.
No, the door in the front is an entrance to a house. Indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. 15, this happens to be a walk-in closet, but I didn't take it because it's a walk-in closet. I took it because of the setup of the sliding door. Okay? Look at the setup of that sliding door. Let's assume, leave out the closet. Okay, it's actually not a walk-in closet, it's just a closet. You can't walk into it. But assuming for a second that were the doorway into a room that was a real room. Okay? Would he get a mezuzah? Would he get a mezuzah?
Can't see the left side.
Okay, but look at the way that the door, the whole sliding mechanism, and let's assume for a second that all of these doors slide. Okay, the entire mechanism is within. It's not a frame. It's just a space in the wall, and I don't think that you can count that as being a lintel, and as the side as being a frame. You don't have a frame. It's just a wall that goes in. Wouldn't get a mezuzah. 16 we discussed. Okay, now let's look at 17. 17 is the case that many people have in their homes. Now there's a distinction which is to be made between, let's say, 17, where it could be that all those doors are movable, versus 19, where it looks like only the middle two are movable. Okay? So in 17, that is the example of what I said before. I think it's just a big window. However, in 17, it does look like, because the inner door, the door which is open right now, is on the inside, it does look like there is the possibility of putting the mezuzah. In other words, that there is actually a frame there. So if the track were of the kind where it would go all the way, that there was space for track all the way through where that space was, at the very edge, I would say no mezuzah required and no mezuzah possible. But because there is an extra space there, I think that because of that ability, you can put a mezuzah there, and you should put a mezuzah there, especially since that's an extra house.
This, right there.
That one,
almost like a door post.
okay? 18. So I can't really tell. 18. These are sliding doors, where the sliding doors they come out on both sides, and it looks like there is a frame on the other side of the door. If we're reading it correctly. If that is the case, then that is the two sides, and a lintel and a mezuzah would be required. Now look at 19. 19. This is actually an issue which we have here, and I think we should actually change it owing to the reality. So it's the same question that we have here in the shul. When these doors are put in, there are hinges on the outer door. What we have, and there was a thought process at one point in time that these doors would open completely. On account of what has been, and that's why the mezuzah is where it is, by the way. Even though it's not required to have mezuzah here in the first place, as I said much earlier regarding the shul, but that's why the mezuzah is where it is, and I think we should probably change it. Because ever since the hinges on top were put in, we are not opening these doors at all. We're not, even though there are hinges and those doors theoretically open, we're not opening those doors because right now they're just bolted in place, and it's going to be this way. So as a result, it's the same question we have in number 19. In number 19, this might be sliding doors. The doors on the two sides might be sliding as well. But I think that in the scheme of things, even though they look like they're just big windows and they're not really doors, but they constitute a frame for the door, for the double door that you have in the middle. And as a result, on the right side, if this were somebody's house, on the right side going in, you'd have to put a mezuzah on the door on the right, which is sealed. Not on the outside, not in the outside frame, which does have a frame and a lintel, but you see very clearly that the two middle doors have a frame and a lintel, and therefore they should get a mezuzah going in. Okay, so hopefully through the different things which we've seen, I think that through the conversation we've addressed a lot of the different kinds of designs and situations that people would have. We got a different kind of a sense and feeling of where mezuzah is required, where mezuzah is not required. And in general, it's a good idea that when putting up mezuzahs, remember, you're allowed to put a mezuzah in a place that's not required. But you can't say bracha. So it's a good idea that when moving into a house or when putting up mezuzahs, to make a bracha on a spot that definitely requires a mezuzah, and then have in mind all the other mezuzahs under that bracha, and this way you're at least covered mitzad and halacha, since you're not making a bracha latella in putting up mezuzah that might not possibly be required.